All right. Chapter 18: The Operational Practice Field Inspector's Focus Inspection Process, which is about 25 pages or more. The focus inspection process. The focus inspection process of the operational practice field inspectors, the federal, state operational practice and field inspectors' duties regarding the focus inspection process are essentially on the operational practice discipline meeting of the stated goals of the agency. The operational practice field inspector meeting their own professional and performance goals. Operational practice field inspector includes the state inspector will develop the focus inspection process chart to determine why the regional operational practice specialist, regional operational practice specialist will provide guidance in the operational field inspector, operational practice state inspector with the field focus inspection process documents and serious noncompliance or safety concerns. Overview of the field inspection process for the operational field inspector. The federal, state, and operational inspection is required to take a chart in hand the format of the computer format in any format of the regional specialist choice. The following three items for their own territory. Accident injuries, Part 225 inspection, including the suggestion that they include accountability reports with the feasible all FRA inspection activities dashboard RSIPC reports, acceptable activity code 217BT observations. Once the charting is significant data that is shown to be reviewed, therefore obvious trends with non-compliance safety issues, the inspector should use his or her charting the analysis to prioritize the FRA time and resources. The federal, state, and operational inspector practice inspector will provide the regional operational practice specialist with the chart is analyzing at least once per year quarter. Routine review of the operational testing data without the first narrowing the size and the scope of the data using the focused inspection process. Steps 1 through 5 are not part of the focused inspection process. The operating practice inspector is required to keep the regional operational practice specialist informed for any of the issues revealed by the federal focus inspection process. The operational inspector should use the enforcement tools that involve the operational testing data and inspection, obtaining the compliance with the identified issue, documented with the inspection process. The inspector will follow up on all safety issues until they are resolved. Alright, focus inspection process. Step 1, the operating field is practice and field inspector charting the Part 225 data. Inspectors will create a database focus inspection process charting the accident incident data for their inspection territory using the information found in the FRA Office of the Railroad Safety website and Part 225 accountable records of the operational field inspector received directly from the railroad. The FRA safety data sheet of the website, safety data FRA.gov, the Office of Safety. The essential for the inspector may make effort to ensure that the railroad has reported the accident injury is accurately, including all parts of 225 accountability and accountable incidents. 2.01 report the train accident report. 2.01 the potential data analysis tool that allows the users to retrieve the detailed accident data on a particular railroad. This report provides specialists with overall picture of the accident occurring on a selected road railroad. From this report, the specialist should be able to gain basic understanding of the road location and the cause of the accident that has occurred, correlate with the data on the assigned FRA field inspector territories. Example, the 2.01 report authors note there is no intent for the reader to be able to read, but the table below shown, the table is merely an example of what the inspector received when they performed their query specified in the step. This is found on safetydata.fra.gov, the Office of Safety public site query initiation 1. Gathering accidents data with the charting 2.03 of the report, the train accident, the railroad groups. The 2.03 the starting the point of the data analysis will guide the specialist toward areas of concern. The report of the present relevant information is clear in an understandable format. The raw accident and number of the visible as well as the percentage increase or decrease after the railroad is identified as an area of the concern. For the process moves on to the 2.0 report for the more in-depth analysis. Example of the 2.03 report authors note there is no intent that the reader will able to read the table shown below, but the table is merely an example of what inspectors receive when they perform the query specified in this table. 3.07 report the accident and state railroad reports prevents relevant data in the spreadsheet and allows the direct access to the railroad submitted with the railroad equipment. Accident incident reports the FRA 6100 54 information of the Form 54 is extremely detailed, provided with a narrative description of the accidents not found in the searchable data. Review of these reports provided with the specialist and additional level of the understanding related to the accidents occurring in the region. Example 3.07 report, and authors note there's no intent for the reader to be able to read the table shown below. The table is merely an example of what the inspector received when they performed their query specified in this step. 3.08, the report the accident map of the table will provide the inspector with a quick view of the counties. 3.08, authority note, there is no intent for the reader to be able to read the table shown below. The table is merely an example of what the inspectors received to perform the queries and specified in the step. For the instance, Nebraska. Gathering injury data, the charting 2.0 report. The employee can duty casualty report 2.0 report as the starting point for the analysis related to the employee injury data provides any overview of the employee and the injuries that have occurred during the designated time frame similar to the process associated with the accidents. Once an area of the concern is identified and more in-depth, the analysis can be taken place with using the 4.05. 4.05 is the casualty by state railroad type of the report. 4.05 report data can be refined to focus on specific areas and concerns. The report presents summary information that can help during the injury data analysis. Authority example 4.0 report authority note, there's no intent for the reader to be able to read the table shown below. The table is merely an example of what the inspector receives when they perform the queries in the specified step. 4.06 report the casualty detail report. The 4.06 allows the review of the specific railroad injury illness forms. FRA form 61855A. The form FFA 55A provides detailed information on the reported casualty and may provide additional narrative information that is helpful during the analysis of the data. Example 4.06 authorities note there is no intent for the reader to be able to read the table shown below. The table is merely an example of what the inspector received, what they performed the queries and specified in the step. Alright, Gaunt's accountability reports. The FRA does not have a data bank for these results. Field inspectors shall acquire as many of the accountable records directly from the railroad as feasible. Initial railroad equipment, the accident incident report, the FRA form 561987. 97, railroad employee injury illness record, the 618098, whenever possible. Guidance for the accountability reports, 225.3, accountability, the record requirements regarding the accountability injuries, illness, accountability, rail equipment, accident, incidents, for accidents and incidents found in the statute 225.25 A through G does not apply to railroads that operate on the track of the general railroad system or the transportation that have 15 or fewer employees covered by the hours of service law, Title 49 U.S. Standard Code 21101, 107 through 107. Railroads are that operate on or track exclusive of the general system. Note the accountability records reports and inspectors should be referenced for all parts of the 225 Railroad Accident Incident Report, classification, and investigation. Step 1, example of the charting accidents, including accountability accident reports. Note the blank of the chart and the forms can be found at the end of this chapter. You have your the day, the time, the cause, the cost, the location, the reportable or yes or no in the notes for about a month or so. And someone example of the charting inquiries, including the accountability reports. Note the blank charting forms can be found at the end of this chapter. Date, time, injury, job, location, reportable, yes, no. The note of the inspector should ensure that all the injuries, accidents determined to be reportable to the FRA were reported correctly on the FRA Safety Data website. Focused inspection process. Step 2, the operator procedure field inspector charting on-site inspection charting. The FRA on-site inspection should be completed so that it's compared to the other steps in the focus inspection process. Charting on the inspection using the correct activity code and the source code and essential of the focus inspection. The FRA frequently filters inspection database on the source of the codes. Activity codes created with specialized summary reports. Narrative section of the inspection report should be clearly articulate and present information related to the on-site inspection. Step 2, example of the charting on-site for FRA inspection. Example, the inspector has listed the FRA non-defective FRA deficiencies found during a 6-month period, February through July, on the Nebraska Railroad at Blackshirt, Nebraska. Defective violation, CFR or ROR. Inspection report description, date and time, date of the week of the time, the date and location. Focus inspection process. Step 3, the operational practice. Field inspector charting. The joint testing session of the activity code 217T. Inspectors will monitoring operational testing sessions of the railroad manager. See operational manual of chapter 19. The rest of the testing session should be charted so that the data can be used in the final step of the focus in process. Set the three examples charting 217T activity the railroad in Nebraska operating with the testing performed with the accompanied by the FRA inspector in the 6-month period activity code 217T. Blank chart forms can be found at the end of the chapter. The railroad op test, description test, total test, 217 railroad manager's record failures accompanied by the FRA inspection. The operational test above involved with the train master Tom Osborne, who recorded the fewest number of the failures. The train master Rosier recorded the highest number of the failures, and the road foreman Nardigan so recorded the average number of the failures one in a year. Focus inspection step. The operational practice field inspector analyzes the charts in step 1 and 3. The proper charting of the previous steps will enable the inspector to professionally analyze the data, the trends of the route causes of the charts, along with the inspector analysis will be used to support the findings of the discussing relevant events with the railroad manager, the regional operational practice specialist, and the operational state manager. Inspectors will accept it to provide the FRA state manager with the charting in the previous step, along with the analysis of the charting when requested. The focus in process will simplify the analysis, make efforts more effective, as well as inspectors more professional. Focus inspection process step 5. The operational field inspector determining the size and scope of the operational testing data to be reviewed. When the operational practice and field inspector has identified the non-compliance root cause of the accident trends by utilizing the focus inspection steps 1 through 4, the inspector will use that documented data to determine the size and the scope of the operational testing records to be requested from the railroad or reviewed. Once the size scope of the operational testing data has been sufficiently reduced, then one of the issues relevant to the finding of the steps focus inspection steps 1 through 4, operational field inspector will request the guidance for the regional managers as how to obtain the relevant operating tests. Some of the railroads will provide information with the FRA in a hard copy format. Other railroads will provide the information to the FRA in Excel format. Note, regulatory issues are identified if an operational practice field inspector inspection of an operational testing data is not relevant to any of the document. The focus in process charting to be may be important, but is not part of the focus inspection process. Focus inspection process requires the operational testing data analyzed to be limited to the size of the narrow scope with a clear documented purpose before it can be effective. Inspectors should reference the chart 19217P. Inspection data analysis normalization to complete this step. The operational testing of data is explained in the chapter. Focus inspection step 6. The operational field inspector reviewing the enforcement operation. The statement will require the review of all enforcement operations regardless of any issue identified with the documented below the focus inspection process. Previous steps will provide with the documentation as well as the required supporting evidence required for the effective FRA enforcement. Focus inspection step for the operational field inspector follow-up. The inspector should use the inspection report re-inspection source code to follow the completion of the focus inspection steps 1 through 7. Although the charting of these efforts is not mandated, it is strongly suggested so that the operational practice field inspectors are provided with the tangible measures of their success. The focus inspection conclusion. Operational field inspector responsibility regarding technical aspects of the FIP lies on the operational field inspector level. The regional operational specialist, operational practice state manager, operational practice field inspector should make their territorial focus inspection analysis charting of the priorities so that real-time information can be provided through our FRA senior managers when requested. If the field inspector of the focus inspection performed properly, it will enable the senior FRA managers to address systematic issues that are the root cause of many of the human factors, injuries, accidents, and injuries in the railroad industry. Example of the focus inspection. Example 1, non-compliance observed. The field operator inspector observed an engineering dismounting equipment improperly. The inspector documented the non-compliance on the inspection and reported the non-FRA deficiency. The inspector of the focus inspection chart indicates all that there are 5 injuries involving dismounting the equipment for the railroad in his or her area. One of the 5 injuries there would be reported to the FRA to the work recorded by accountability injuries. The inspector provided the information activity code 225R to the railroad of an inspection report. The inspection charts indicated the manager recorded a failure dismounting of the equipment using during a joint operational testing session for the 3 months earlier. Activity code 217T. The inspector charts indicate that she has recorded 5 previous non-FRA defects regarding dismounts of equipment. Using the op testing data to support the inspector's analysis, after discussing the situation with their regional operational specialist, the state manager to determine the scope of the operational test analysis, the activity code 217P, the inspector makes the formal request of the railroad for the operational testing data for the 6 months regarding with operational testing that correlate with his or documented concerns. The inspector analysis for the operating testing the document that there are more than minimal steps conducted by the railroad manager to address the high number of the injuries connected with the dismounting equipment. The analysis is indicated that the managers have found only 5 failures regarding this test. Quarterly review and when or railroad updating of the operational testing program. Field operating practice inspector has discussed the analysis with her regional operational practice specialist, the operational practice state manager, the railroad superintendent, which was documented on the inspection report activity code LTO. The FRI made it clear that there is a regulatory requirement that the railroad address the injury through the rules. The compliance superintendent then agreed to make adjustments for the operational testing program. Following up using the reinspection source code for the inspector follows up the one situation on regard of the basis until the injury rated and properly dismounted equipment drops to an acceptable level. The inspector documents that the follows up the inspection report using the reinspection source code. Example 2 is non-compliance observed. The federal operational specialist inspector observed the locomotive of Nebraska 1234 leaving the track at 10 stops to line of the magnet misaligned switch of the lead. The crew failed to stop in the clear and the training point movement. The inspector intervened with the crew with acknowledged that they did not know that they were violating federal regulation. And the inspector documented non-compliance on any of the inspection report as Federal Deficiency Activity Code 218-0. The inspector focused in process charts indicated that over the past 2 years there has been 7 accidents reported, 3 reportable and 4 accountable that have been recorded for the equipment and foul. 2 of these accidents were quite serious, included injuries. 2 inspectors provided with that information activity code 225R to the railroad on the inspection report. The 217T chart indicated that the inspector has not been on a joint testing session with the manager regarding the equipment in the foul. As a result, the crew allegation is whether they were unaware that there were violation of federal regulations. The inspector were conducting interviews of the manner at this location. Interviews with the railroad manager also acknowledged that they were unaware of the federal regulation regarding the equipment in the foul activity code LTO. The situation elevated within the system rules. The compliance managers also indicated misunderstanding through the federal regulations. Using the operation testing data to support the inspector's analysis, after discussing this situation with the regional operational specialist and the operational state manager, for the inspector made the formal request to the railroad for the 6 months operating testing data regarding with the specific rule for the correlated to the equipment in the foul. The operating testing documented with the railroad had been adequately increased the amount of the operational testing to address this situation. Activity code 217P. The inspector analysis of the chart documented a high number of non-compliance in this area with regarding the issue, but analysis of the operational testing data documented very few operational testing failures regarding the same issue. Due to the managers the employees intervened with, where they acknowledged that they did not understand the federal requirements of the equipment in the file, the inspector concluded that the route of the cause of the non-compliance was likely that the managers were not conducting the operational test correctly. In addition, with the inspector suspected that the managers were not trained to perform the operational test correctly, the railroad employees systematically misunderstood the federal regulation regarding the equipment of the file, led the inspector to perform the comprehensive review of the railroad operating rules in effect that involved the equipment in the file activity code rule and 218.0. The review of the operational rules documented with the conflicting railroad in effect, which the inspector documented on the inspection report. Follow up using the reinspection source code. The inspector follows up with the situation on a regular basis using the compliance for the equipment in the file is acceptable level. The inspector documentation of this files up the inspection reporting the using the reinspection source code. Sample 3, a noticeable spike in accidents found in the inspector charts. Inspector focused in process charts documented a high number of reportable accidents involving switches in his territory, which includes multiple railroads. The inspector increased the field inspection of the crews using the switches. Inspector closely scrutinized the accountability of reportable accidents involving the switches. Activity 225R. 225R locking the parting patterns involving the time of the day of the week, pairing screws and the type of the switch and the type of the cards, etc. The inspector charts documented that all the accidents happened in the yards involved with the yard switches, and the inspector increases the amount of the joint operational testing activity code 217T regarding the switches in the yard, takes the opportunity to discuss federal expectation regarding switches with the crews manager activity code LTO. Using the op testing data to support the inspector's analysis, after discussing the situation with the regional operational specialist, the operational state manager, The inspector made a formal request to the railroad for the 6-month operational testing data regarding the specific rules for the correlated with the switch. Operational testing data documented with the railroad had an adequate increase of the amount of the operational testing to address the situation activity code 217B. The inspector analysis of the charts of the railroad operating testing data documented compliance in this area regarding the switches. The inspector performed the comprehensive review of the railroad operating rules in effect with the involved switches activity code rule 2180. Alright, continuing, reviewing the quarterly review for the railroad, updating with the operational testing program. The inspector has documented that the railroad has updated their operational testing program to accommodate the necessary testing for the switches. Identifying the root cause, the inspector attended the safety meetings operational testing sessions to discuss the high number of the accidents involving switches in his territory with the railroad employees involved with the railroads. The FRA documented with a high level of compliance regarding the switches. It was documented that the same switch type that was involved with all the accidents and the 45-degree yard switch handles. The railroad managers of the FRA requested an assistant for the FRA track inspector to assist determining in which the switch type could be root cause of the spike in the accidents. It was documented that the switch would work properly. It was determined that all parties were likely the root cause for the switchman were deceived with the sound of the switch being latched when it was not. The solution was to equip each of the switches with the 45-degree handles with the hooks. The FRA with the railroad manager made attentive plans to increase the observation of the crews and ensure the compliance with the railroad rules to use the hook when required. Follow up using the reinspection source code. The inspector follows up with the situation on a regular basis until the accident rate involved the switch drops down to acceptable level. The inspector documents the following up of the inspection report using the reinspection source code. Focused inspection process guidance for the FRA and state managers. Focused inspection purpose. The focus process of the focus inspection process is to reduce the human factor caused by train accidents, train yard, engine, employees' injuries. The analysis of FRA data gathered Office of Safety Occurrence and Compliance with the data is used to determine how human efforts and the other accident incidents trends in specific railroads and specific states and counties. The data further is used to analysis the type of the kind of accidents, incident track of the type, and some location process of finding commonalities and the trends to assist determine whether the FRA inspectors should be used in their resource. The process also assists Office of Safety Assurance and Compliance in making the determination regardless of regulatory compliance as well as the rules compliance on the railroad through the nation. A key component of the project is continued with the headquarters efforts to monitor the inspection program to ensure the effective implementation of the focused inspection. Addressing leading human factors causing accidents, and one of the top actions in the FRA's National Rail Safety Action Plan, or NRSPAP. In light of the recent negative trends on some of the railroad regarding the human factor caused by the accident incidents, FRA has used and will continue to use the process developing and support safety compliance agreements (SCAs), which for railroads to reverse the trend. The project will make full use of the newly developed dashboard to facilitate the effective accomplishment of the following objects: track out the most frequent high-risk causes of accidents, focus the FRA's oversight inspection resources, accelerate the research efforts that have potential to mitigate and largest risk, allow the railroad to develop and implement remedial action to address and correct safety issues. Regional and state managers' responsibilities. The objection focused on the inspection process to provide with the tool to assist the inspector to identify the root causes so the FRA can direct the resources in correcting the bona fide concerns accomplished by ensuring that the railroad managers and inspecting territories and are enforcing federal regulation, railroad operating rules that they have been identified as the root cause of the accident, injuries, and non-compliance. And operating practice inspector overall success with impact safety can be directly linked to the railroad manager's enforcement of federal regulation and railroad operating rules. The focused inspection process establishes basic framework for the operational practice field inspector comprehensive knowledge of his or her territory. It would also assist the operational practice field inspector with the building quality relationship with the other railroad safety partners and keeping the operational practice field inspector abreast of the current safety issues in the territory using the tangible support evidence of their safety concerns. Focused inspection may not fit in all situations encountered with the implementation levels of the practice process, but issues related to the step, scope, and analysis, time frame, geographical areas, type of the accident, incidents, and can be identified by this process. The FRA regional managers working through the proper protocols should ensure that the state operational practice field inspectors as well as the field inspectors are performing the field inspection process requirements. This will entire the agency's resources as well as state resources can be directed toward identified areas to maximize their own activities. To ensure that our agency has the most current up-to-date information available, our partners' operational practice state inspectors will be expected to assist in their efforts. State managers are required to ensure the state operational practice inspectors under the charge perform this charting in the format agreed upon the federal regional operational specialists. These charts, along with the state inspectors' analysis of these charts, those shall be presented in the federal regional operational specialist at least once per quarter. Simply stated that the process will accomplish the FRA mission with the focus of their resources on the activities that will reduce, identify human factor accident risk, and ensuring the railroad is enforcing their own operating rules. The overall approach with the focus inspection process, there are various levels of oversight of the responsibility. We have divided their responsibilities into three categories: headquarters operational specialists, regional operational specialists, operational state managers, operational field inspectors. The following is a brief summary of the expectation of the headquarters operational specialist and the regional operational specialist, operational state manager. Overview of the headquarters operating practice specialist. The FRA headquarters operational specialist will provide the support of the resource to field when the trends are accurately identified. This will also assist the obtaining of the operational testing data. Once the scope of the operational testing data has been identified, the FRA headquarters operational specialist will also coordinate with multi-regional efforts and to identify the trends are also found to include more than one FRA region. Overall, the region of the operational specialist, operational state manager, the regional operational specialist, or the operational state manager will review the operational field inspector required charting analysis when presented with the issue identified with the focus process. Once the operational field inspector has properly documented the focus in the focus inspection process concerned with the regional operational specialist along with the operational state manager. When practical, will provide a field inspector guidance, with the guidance include additional resource at the team inspection. Note: regional operational specialist, operational state manager should insist that all efforts related to the focus inspection process are documented on 96 report if applicable. Focus inspection steps. The regional operational specialist, operational state manager focus inspection to succeed. The regional operational specialist must be consistent with their level of data analysis. Primary level of the operational regional specialist is conducted the basic analysis of the charting analysis presented to them on the operational field inspector in this charge. In their charge, this includes the state operational inspector as well as the federal operational inspector. Step 1, the regional operational specialist, operational state manager collecting accident incident data as an option. Operational field inspector provides the regional operational specialist, the operational state manager, the required focus inspection process. Charting each of the territory and the region of the manager and used in the macro level view, the trends occurring through the region. Focused inspection process analysis. State and federal managers will be able to provide guidance for the operational field inspector on the precise scope of the railroad's operating testing data that should be reviewed. Step 2, the regional operational specialist, operational state manager, and data evaluation. Important part of the focus inspection of the regional operational specialist, operational state manager evaluation of the focus inspection charting performed by the operational field inspector. In the charge, the manager should use the focus inspection to develop guidance to provide with the operational practice field inspector when the focus inspection issues correctly identified by the operational field inspector. The regional operational specialist, operational state manager clearly define the expectations of guidance to the operational field inspector in the field of their charge. Increase the inspection activities at the Lincoln, Nebraska yard and related to the relevant federal regulations on the railroad operating rules. Note: the regulatory issues identified in the operational field inspector inspection of any of the operational testing data that is not relevant to any of the document. The focus process chart may be important, but not as important part of the focus inspection process. The focus inspection process requires operational testing data that analyzed to be of the limited size of the narrow scope with a clear documented purpose before it can be effective. Step 3, regional operational specialist, operational state manager redirecting resources. As noted, there are different resources available to the regional operational specialist, the op state managers that can be used to support an inspector's focused inspection process. Issued in some cases, a single inspector can complete a follow-up inspection evaluating the problems. However, in other instances, areas may warrant redirecting applicable resources to correctly establish areas of concern, and team inspection may be warranted. Team inspection. The key of the team inspection is quality of the inspectors involved with the different levels of experience, but the inspector ranks the FRA. The team inspections are excellent opportunity for additional training and education for the inspectors. Team efforts should have the well-developed and sense of purpose prior to the actual safety inspection to include the knowledge of the operating rules, knowledge of the operating testing programs, knowledge of the territory's charting, data knowledge of the railroad's ability to meet these goals and achieve the quality tests. State 4, Regional Operational Specialist, Operational State Managers follow-up. Regional Operational Specialist, Operational State Managers should be engaged in the close supervision of the Operational Field Inspector persistent in the following focused inspection process concerning the compliance. The following is an example of the Regional Operational Specialist, Operational State Manager review the Operational Field Inspection chart. Reviewing the data, accident charts provided by the Operational Field Inspector clearly indicated with the Railroad of Nebraska, January, June, in County Cook County, Nebraska had an increase of H306 in accidents, showing the absence of a demand of 200%. Evaluation and inspection activity charts provided by the Operational Field Inspector clearly indicated that the FRA inspector activity at this location should be increased by using additional state inspectors as the team inspection approach. Guidance to the request of the Operational Field Inspector increased the inspection activity in the BNSF County Corps. BNS Cook County yards related to the H306 accidents, including the days of the week and hours that the charted accidents occurred. Accidents occurring also request the Operational Field Inspector scheduled as assigning team members to the team inspection in the Cook County follow-up. Have the inspector routinely report his or her findings provided with the feedback. This includes documented following up using the reinspection source code of his or her own on his or her inspection report. This shows your job aid chart 225, accidents, date, time, cause, cost, location, reportable, yes or no, notes. Then the page is left blank. Job aid 225, injuries, date, time, injury, job, location, reportable, yes or no. Blank charts. Job aid chart inspection, defects, violations, CFR, ROR, inspection report, description, related time, date of the time, the date of the week of the time, location. Job chart 217T, the railroad operational test, description, total test, railroad failures 217T, FRA exceptions during the 217T. Insert chapter tab here. Chapter 19, operating practices, inspection principle and guidance.